Now this is a format in which you can see the optional parts: attention line, subject line, enclosure notation, copy notation, and PostScript. What are the different parts of a business letters? They are the attention line, subject line, enclosure notation, copy notation, mailing notation, PostScript, addressee notation, and second page heading. Well, actually, second page heading is not the optional parts of a business letter, but sometimes when your letter exceeds more than one pages, so you must be familiar how to format the second page. First, our part is the attention line. When we use attention line in a business letter, when you want to direct a letter to a particular title or person or a department in an organization, or when you know that the person to whom you are sending the letter, who is known as the addressee, who is known as the recipient, or who is the person who is the reader of the letter, travels often. Okay, travels often. So you want the reply of the message to be prompt, and you want the reply of your letter to be prompt. So in that case, you use the notation attention line. Secondly, when you don't know the surname of the person, or you know only the first name of that person, and you want that person letter to reach that and you want the letter to reach that particular person. Okay, so for that case, in that case, we use the attention line. Normally it is typed at the left hand margin, but can also be mentioned at the center. It is typed below the inside address, and you leave two spaces after the inside address, and you mention the word attention. Here are the two examples. Mr. Asad, here you don't know the surname of that person. Then there is another example in which you don't know you don't know the person, but you just wanted the letter to be directed to a particular department. For example, attention civil engineering department. attention line जो है वो आप इस्तेमाल करते हैं when you don't know, when you want that letter to reach a particular person. मतलब आप चाहते हैं कि वो letter जो है उस particular person तक पहुंच जाए. Then we have the subject line. It is actually optional parts of a business letter, but for business when letters are being directed to higher managements, then it becomes the important part, or it comes under the standard parts of a subject letter. You people usually use a subject line in applications, okay, but we also use them in business letters, especially when it is written to the higher managements. Okay, subject line. Why we use subject line? It is to tell the reader or the recipient or the addressee what the message is about or what the letter is about, because the high managements are so busy that they just simply look at the subject line and then they get the idea what this letter is going to be about. It makes their it just spares some time for them. Okay, mentioning the subject line is to sparing a time of sparing a time instead of hustling throughout hustling the whole or reading the whole paragraph and then coming up what what was the message which this writer or the writer want to convey to us. Okay, so for this, in order to make everything clear, so we use the subject line. Okay, it is placed, or where we typed it, it is typed after the inside address. We leave two spaces, but if you are using the attention line, then we typed it after the attention line. Okay, so it the places varies. Now It is on the left hand margin. The sentence we should be very precise. Okay, it should be a short sentence or it should include few words also. Now, a subject line can be written without the word subject line or with the word subject line. The sentence or the words of the subject lines can be bold, underlined. They can be all be written in capital letters, or some, or you can go for the lowercase letters. It's up to you people. For example, look at this example. Subject, free concession, fire insurance policy, inquiry about Samsung television. So it can be anything. Next comes the enclosure notation. This is required when some documents or like a resume or a CV or a check or important a list or invoices are attached or with the letter. Okay, so in that case, we use the enclosure notation in case if these documents get misplaced somewhere. So the person who is reading the letter, he might get an idea that something was attached with this letter, and they can call you back and ask you to email to send those documents again. Okay, so it is also in that case it is also an important notation. We includes you can include a serial of numbers. Okay, the enclosures notation can include one or two or three or more than three documents. Is up to you can mention all whatever you have attached, you mention them in the enclosure notation. It is typed on the left hand side. Yeah, it is always typed on the left hand margin and after the signature area with double spacing. Next is the copy notation. Copy notation is used when you want to send the letter apart from the recipient, when to send the copy of the letters apart from the receiver or the addressee or the reader. So for in that case, you go for this notation. Now, copy notation is, keep in mind that copy notation is not mentioned on the letter or on the letter which on the, you can simply say that this notation is not mentioned on the main letter which you are going to send to the recipient. Instead, it is mentioned on the copies which you are it is mentioned on the copies which you are going to send to the recipients. Now, copy notation, that in that case, we use blind copy notation. Let me clear it in this way. We use copy notation when we want to when we want to send the copies of this letter to another people, okay, apart from the addressing. We go for double C copy notation. Then we use blind copy notation. When we use blind copy notation, when we want to send the copy of the original letter to other persons, but we don't want the recipient to know about this. We want to keep it a secret that we have sent a copy of this letter to another people also, to another persons also. So in that case, you go for the blind copy and you mention this notation only on the copies which you have sent to the other people, not the original copy or not the copy not the copy of the address. Okay, not the person to whom the letter is actually directed. मतलब ये है कि जो आपकी कॉपी नोटेशन है, जो ब्लाइंड कॉपी नोटेशन है, वो आप सिर्फ जो कॉपीज हैं फोटो जो बाकी कॉपीज हैं जो बाकी लोगों को आपने सेंड करनी है, देर आप उसको मेंशन करते हैं उन कॉपीज के ऊपर, बट यू नेवर मेंशन इट जो है वो आप इसको कभी भी मेंशन नहीं करते जो आपने उस रिसिपिएंट को सेंड करनी है. सो यू हैव टू बी केयरफुल for that. Okay, double C we use for copy notation. Sometimes we use C, but most preferably we use double C. This one is the lowercase, but we prefer the uppercase one, means capital letters. We use capital letters. PC is for the photocopy, means if you are sending the photocopies of those letters, so you can go for PC, that this is not the original copy of the letter. These are being photostat and you have sent the photostat of those copies to these people. But if they are the original copies, so you simply go for double C. And if it is a blind copy, you use the notation VC. And if blind photocopies, you use the notation BPC, and it is typed after enclosure notation with you leave two line spaces, and if there is no enclosure notation, then it is typed after the signature area. This is an example of your copy notations. So simply when you are you are emailing, okay, there you will also find these copy notations. Next is, what is mailing notation? So whenever letter is sent by special or extraordinary means, such as special delivery or certified or registered mail, then we write mailing notations. And you can write the mailing notation in three different areas. But there are three ways, or there are three places where you can mention the mailing notations. You can write mailing notations after the date, above the inside address, okay, definitely above the inside address, or you can type it at the very end, means the after, you can go for the, it should be, if you are using mailing notation, it should be the last notation of the letter, and you always leave double spaces, okay. And keep in mind, you don't mention the word mailing notation and colon and this special delivery. You just simply write the word special delivery, certified, or registered mail. You don't go for the word mailing notation. Then we have the PostScript. PostScript is that you write, when you mention this notation, when you want to emphasize a certain point which is already you have mentioned in the paragraph, and you want to mention it again, or you want to put a stress on it, or you want to emphasize it again, you go for this notation. You go for PostScript, okay. You write it in the emphasized point by in front of these words, PostScript, okay. PostScript can also include a message which is not related to the main body of the paragraph. Okay, it can be something different. Okay, it can be unrelated, or in past, when there was no internet, or there was no concept of email, people used PostScript when they forget a line in the letter. So instead of rubbing it off, or mentioning instead of rubbing it off, or mentioning it somewhere above the sentence, they're going to use, or they use this PostScript notation. So if they forget a line or some important point in the middle of the letter, or if they want to mention a message, unrelated message, not related to the paragraph, so they will simply go for this PostScript notation. Now, nowadays, we don't need this. Okay, if we simply forget a line, you just simply go there, you delete it, or you just put a space and enter the forgotten sentence over there. But in today, nowadays, it is mostly used when you want to emphasize something, or if you want to write something out of the context, which is not related to the paragraph, or which is not related to the main idea or the subject. It can be typed, or as well as you can handwritten it. Okay, so in both ways it is um, uh, possible or it is applicable. Okay, so in both ways you can go for it. For example, you can look at this example. Please also send the rate list and PS Eid Mubarak. These are the two ways of writing the this PostScript notation. Next is addressee notation. Addressing notation we use when you want to restrict the readership of the letter. Okay, that you want the letter to be read only by the person or by the recipient or by the addressee. Okay, this happens only in those situations when letters are being handled by the secretaries or personal assistants. Okay, so before being read by the higher management, it is being read by the secretaries or the personal assistants, and then they forward that letter to the addressee. But if they find out that you have already mentioned confidential or personal or please forward in the letter, so they will directly forward it to the recipient. So, and where we typed it, it is written below the inside address. You always leave two line spaces, and it is always written in capital letters. Last one is the second page heading. What you are going to do when your letter exceeds to the next page. Okay, what is going to be the heading? So heading, we have three options over here, and we're going to discuss them. Now look at this one. This one is the first option. You write the name of the recipient or the addressee or to whom you are writing the letter. Then you're going to write the date and the page number. This is the one format. Second one is this one, name. In front of that name you go for the uh, date, and then you mention the page. The third option is that on the very left hand margin you mention the name of the recipient, you leave a space. You can also say is that at the center you mention the page number with two dashes before and after it. Then on the very right hand margin you go for the date. So these are the three ways of writing the headings of the second page. Page can be, instead of two you can go for three or four and five. Depends on the letter. Okay, how long the letter is. And after writing this address heading, you are going to leave two line spacing, and then you are going to write the paragraphs. You're going to start with the paragraph, so be careful with that. Okay, just you don't start your paragraph just by leaving one space or just right after these headings. Okay, you start your paragraphs by leaving two lines or two spaces. Okay, so keep this in mind, and you can go for any of these three formats for your second page headings. This was our lecture for today. Thank you.